Hi, I'm Tessa and welcome to Little Lady Homestead. This video is to follow up on my last video where I bought my seeds for my summer garden, and even before I finished editing that video, I started organizing my seeds that I had received in the mail so that hopefully this year I start my seeds at the right time, I actually transplant them at the right time, and that way I can maximize my harvest a little bit more than my scant harvest that I had last year. Last year was my first real year gardening, and I really didn't know what I was doing. I read the back of the seed packets to try to figure out when I should plant things and how they should be planted, but it got pretty overwhelming pretty fast, and I don't think I'm a natural gardener. It feels like it doesn't come naturally to me. And so I got overwhelmed, and when I got overwhelmed, things got missed and forgotten about, and a lot of things died. So now I know that about myself, and to try to combat that, I am trying to plan as much as I possibly can so that I don't kill a bunch of plants, and hopefully I get lots of things in the ground and have a big harvest this summer. So if you've watched YouTube to figure out how other people organize their seeds for seed starting, I'm sure you've seen them use one of these. It's a container that holds 20 different 4x6 picture prints, and these are excellent for organizing your seeds, and I actually had this last year to organize my seeds, and I organized them alphabetically so I could easily find whatever I was looking for, and I just wrote down in a notebook the date that I had to start each one and then got them started accordingly. And so this year I wanted to come up with a new system because my last system didn't work very well, and I was still seeing everybody using these, so I thought, okay, there must be a better way. And so instead of organizing mine alphabetically, I decided to organize them by each week that I will do something with the seeds. So mine starts on February 16th and my last one is on June 15th. So I have every week on a label on each of the different containers in there. So instead of organizing it alphabetically by plant species or variety, I'm organizing them by the week. So I had actually seen other people do it that way, and then had some other system for figuring out when they should be started or when they should be transplanted, how many they should plant, but I thought that that was a little bit too complicated. So in each of these containers, I added a card, and this card helps me organize when they need to be transplanted and how many of each species I want to be transplanted or grown, and if there are any successions coming up. So I have at the top the date, which it doesn't have to be this specific date, just any date in that week. It's based off of my last frost date, which is supposed to be on or around May 4th. So I just counted backwards from there and forwards from there. So this one, as example, is March 16th. I have the species, which the first one is carrot, and I have 3 different carrot varieties this year. I have Tender Sweet, Danvers, and Napoli. And I have the transplant date. Now for carrots, I'm not going to start them inside and then transplant them outside, so I just wrote DS for direct sow. In contrast though, the ones that I am starting inside, I wrote, again, the species and variety, but for the transplant date, I actually wrote the date that I want to transplant it. So my Cosmos, the Rubenza, I am going to sow them inside on March 16th, but I'm going to transplant them on May 4th. And then for the number, that's the number of seeds that I want to start. So for my carrots, I want 20 of each variety. For my Cosmos, I'm only going to start 6. And then the carrots, I do have succession plantings that I want to plant. So I want to do that on March 30th and on April 13th. So that helps me know, okay, once I'm done with these carrot packets, I want to find the March 30th and I want to put the carrot seeds in there so they're ready for my next succession planting. So in this little card, it will tell me everything that I need to know until I get my plants in the ground. And then after that point, I will have to create a schedule of when I need to go through and thin anything out if I direct seeded anything out there, which I did not do last year. And that was so bad. I learned my lesson, especially with my carrots. I just planted them right along and they were way too close. Same with my corn. I planted 2 in each hole and I never went and thinned anything out. So I will need an additional planning source in that. Probably once I get these into the ground, I'll probably just use my phone at that point and add the date that I need to go back and thin that variety out, because I definitely don't want to forget that this year. I did that last year with my corn and my carrots. That was probably the worst result that I got because they were just so close together. The carrots were just right on top of each other and intertwined. The corn, I would plant 2 seeds in each hole, and a lot of times the 2 seeds would germinate, and I just never thinned out the second one, and they were stunted in growth. So I want to make sure that I do that, and also set a regular schedule for weeding or applying more mulch. And so that will probably come after I get them in the ground. Another thing that I added on these cards, right below all of the new plantings I'm doing, I put an asterisk and everything that I'm transplanting that week. So for here, March 16th, I want to transplant all of the broccoli that I started inside on February 16th, and there are 18 of them. Also, I'm going to transplant all of the cauliflower that I started on the 16th, and there are 16 of those. So what that helped me do as I was planning all my seeds and organizing all of them after I received them in the mail, I knew that I had 800 seeds that I could start inside that I had space for grow lights for. So I needed to make sure that all this planning that I'm doing, I don't run out of space. I can't say, I want to start 200 zinnias inside and 500 of this and 500 of that. Well, I don't have any room for that. So I want to make sure that I don't run into a spot where I started too many early on and then I run out of space for what I really needed started later on. So as I did this, I counted how many I was putting under grow lights, and I would write down grow light number added. So this week on March 23rd, I added 206 plants under my grow lights, and I subtracted the amount that I was transplanting that week, which that week it was 36. And then I came up to a total. What's the total number of seeds or seedlings do I have under my grow lights? And this number can never exceed 800 for my situation. And that actually did happen. I wasn't too far off. I was at 829, but that let me go back and say, okay, well, I put down 40 broccoli plants. Let me scoop that back by 10. Or, you know, just change things like that so that I would have enough room for everything. So that also helps me to know, okay, well, if I have 400 under the grow lights, but the box tells me that I'm only supposed to have 200, well, why aren't 200 of them in the ground? And then I can go back and see if I missed a transplant date. So it's a way for me to check every week to make sure that I did the work that I should have been doing, because last year I just let things slide by weeks and weeks, and then I would forget, well, what did I miss? And so that will help me a lot. And then I have some of these boxes like May 25th. There are quite a few of them, especially after my last frost date, that they're empty. And that's because either I have a big bag somewhere else, like my soybeans that I'm planting for the pigs, I have a big bag of it. And let's see, the beets I have a big bag for, they're not going to fit in here, but I still made sure to write it down on here. That way I know that I need to plant that this week, and I'm not going to forget about it just because it's not in here. One thing that I used last year that I am going to continue doing is using these little stakes, and these are just little plastic stakes that I can write the species and variety on. But last fall, I think I started taking it one step further, and I wrote down my harvest date on these. So I probably will write the date that I started the seeds, probably right at the top, really small, and the species and variety, and then on the back I will write the transplant date and then the harvest date, and that will go with those seeds. I'll need at least one of these for each species and variety for each day that I sow them. So if I sow some calabrese broccoli on February 16th, then all of the calabrese will get this, at least in that block. I probably won't do one for each cell, but each group of them will get one of these, and then I'll make sure that I put this in the ground next to those. And what I did last year is I made sure to plant all the same of that variety together, and then every time I changed a variety, that place on the row, I would put a new marker. So I'm going to continue that. The biggest thing that helped me with was the harvest date, because when I was out in the garden, if the kids asked me if they could pick something, I could go look at that date, and if it was at least close to that date or a little bit after, I could say yes. That way, being out in the garden and I see something that I want to pick, or the kids want to pick, we could just do it then instead of me running inside and looking at a notebook or going on my phone to see if it was time. So I'll definitely start this again as well. So I am really excited to use this method this year. The biggest reason why I think that this will work out really well is because all of the information for each week is in one place. I don't have my seeds in one place and a folder in another place, and also I'm not seeing everything at once. A lot of other videos that I've seen have like this huge schedule of when things need to be planted and transplanted and harvested, and with me still being new to gardening, it's so overwhelming to see everything all together. I would rather just see individual information for that week only. That way I don't have to think about what's going on. I already sat down and put the time in to figuring out once. I don't need to look at all the other weeks and stress myself out. So I think that's what I'm most excited about. It was a ton of work to go through and organize everything by the week and then write out those cards and make sure that my math was correct on everything. But I think that it was worth it, and I think it was a lot of work on the forefront. That way I don't have to second guess myself during the growing season, because I think things are going to get crazy with the amount of seeds that I'm planting. Things are going to get crazy. I don't want to have to sit down and second guess myself and figure things out again. Also, my hope is that hopefully the dates that I picked, so my first date, it seems really early, and it probably is my first succession planting of broccoli and cauliflower, I think, is this week in the middle of February, and that might be too soon, but it might work out perfectly. We'll see. As you can see, it's pretty warm out here. It was in the 40s today. I think we had a lot of snow, but I think on the mountains you can see it's almost all melted off. It was just a warmer day, and it hasn't been as cold as usual here. So it might be good that I start things early, and if I find out that no, that was just way too early, I can just shift that to the following week or 2 weeks later next year. I won't have to reinvent this whole system next year. Hopefully I'll be able to just reuse all of the cards and all of the cases, and maybe I just change a variety, and then I used pencil for everything, so I can just erase the variety that I used and put in a new variety, and so the work that I do next year will be a fraction of the time. Another thing that I'm really happy about is that this is going to serve as a record of when I planted everything, when I transplanted everything, the varieties that I used, and each year I'll probably go through and write it down into my records book. That way I have the variety recorded and all of the dates recorded. And then if I need to make any changes on my cards, at least I have a record of what I did in previous years. That way I can keep going back and looking at what I've done, what worked and what didn't work. That way I have some data to look back on when I need to decide on what changes I want to make. So if you're starting your seeds this year, I hope that this method might help you a little bit to stay organized. I am so excited to get started. I am really hopeful for this growing season that last year I learned a lot. I'm sure this year I'll learn a lot and make plenty of mistakes, but hopefully I'll make a little bit less than last year and increase my yields and have fun gardening. Thank you so much for watching Little Lady Homestead, and I'll see you in my next video.